Yesterday, the so-called Abraham Accord was signed by Israel, Bahrain and the United Arab Emirates on the White House lawn. This event has students of end times Bible prophecy on high alert. And the verse that first comes to mind is Daniel chapter 9 verse 27. And there it reads, "And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. And in the midst of the week he shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease. And for the overspreading of abominations he shall make it desolate, even until the consummation. And that determined shall be poured upon the desolate." It speaks here about several things. First of all, a peace treaty between Israel and many. Secondly, it will be confirmed, it will be made stronger, which means it has to exist first. And thirdly, there must be sacrifices in order for them to cease, as it mentions. In Matthew 24 verse 15, Jesus gives the place of these sacrifices. He says there, "When ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation, spoken of by Daniel the prophet, stand in the holy place." The holy place, it refers to the temple in Jerusalem. The fulfillment of the prophecy in Daniel 9:27 will immediately start the 7-year tribulation period. Therefore, any movement towards that is highly significant. So how does this relate to yesterday's signing of the peace deal? First of all, many say that it's not a peace deal, but a normalization agreement. Technically, that is correct. However, the players themselves call it a peace deal, and that is what is significant. The Apostle Paul writes, "When they say peace and safety," in 1 Thessalonians 5:3. So it's not what it technically is, it is how they call it. Scripture tells us that it is a deal between Israel and many. And we see here that the agreement was between Israel and the United Arab Emirates first, and that Bahrain quickly followed. And following that, the majority Muslim country Kosovo recognized Israel as a Jewish state. And Serbia decided, as the first European country, to move its embassy to Jerusalem. Part of the agreement is allowing direct flights between Israel and the UAE, and Saudi Arabia opened its airspace for that purpose. And with that, Saudi Arabia is implicitly approving with this normalization agreement. Expected to follow suit is Morocco, who already decided to restore the aviation links between both countries. And also Oman and Qatar are expected to follow. Israel's largest bank, Hapoalim, has signed its own agreement with Dubai, allowing Israeli citizens to wire funds directly between the UAE and other nations. And the Emirates has moved forward with advancing the peace amongst its citizens, with Emirati school curriculum already adapting to include the new peace agreements. So the term many certainly applies to this treaty as it is solidifying more and more. Then there is the issue of the temple, and more specific, the temple on the Temple Mount. Unbeknownst to most people is that there is a clause in this agreement that moves also this closer. Let us look at a specific paragraph in this agreement or peace treaty. And I quote, "As set forth in the vision for peace, all Muslims who come in peace may visit and pray at the Al-Aqsa Mosque. And Jerusalem's other holy sites should remain open for peaceful worshippers of all faiths." End quote. The crux here is that it opens the Al-Aqsa Mosque for all Muslims to visit and pray. Trump mentioned the first half of this clause also specifically in his opening speech at the ceremony. Take a listen.
The Abraham Accords also opened the door for Muslims around the world to visit the historic sites in Israel and to peacefully pray at Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem, the third holiest site in Islam.
It is of course attractive to many Muslims, but it limits this privilege to the mosque only. As it states, all other holy sites in Jerusalem remain open for worshippers of all faiths. So that does also include the rest of the Temple Mount, which at this point is still forbidden for Jews to access for worshipping. This is therefore potentially a major change in the status quo. Interfaith proponent Rabbi Yehuda Klik has already petitioned for permission to blow the shofar on the Temple Mount during the coming fall feasts, just a few days away now. And the authorities have begun with installing loudspeakers on the Temple Mount, allegedly for security reasons. Things are moving. The prophecy teaches us further that it will be the Antichrist who will eventually confirm the peace agreement. That means when that takes place, it is known who the Antichrist is. And Scripture also teaches us that the church will be removed, in other words, the rapture will take place before that. So we are on the brink. And by the way, if you pay close attention to the players, you can speculate with a very high degree of certainty who that son of perdition most likely is going to be. Moreover, the top rabbis in Israel claim that they are already talking with who they call the Messiah and who we know as the Antichrist. They claim that this week's Rosh Hashanah will be the last one without the Messiah. Meanwhile, Israel will be in full lockdown during the holiday season, just as they were during the spring feasts. It is also the first country to go into full lockdown for the second time. Is something ominous about to happen for which the powers that be want the people inside? We will soon know. I will end with the words I always end these messages: keep looking up, for our redemption draws near.